Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing very well and Happy New Year. Yes, we're back again for a whole new year of entertainment. We are going to be tackling 2024 together and I'm so excited to dive into all of the films and TV shows and projects that come out in the upcoming year with you guys. But before we dive into the year of 2024, we need to take a step back for a little bit to continue on a tried and true tradition here on this channel, and that is of course the best of the year video. Now just last year, or at least like 2 years ago now, in 2022, I introduced the Genie Awards to this channel, which I'm so happy to see so many of you guys have been enjoying. But that did put me in a bit of a predicament because there is a lot of overlap between the Genie Awards and the best of videos. So usually I like to do two videos, one tackling films and one tackling TV shows and ranking my top 10 kind of sort of, not really, it's usually more than 10 TV shows and films for the year. But this year I decided to throw all of that out of the window. And today we're going to be tackling not just films, not just TV shows, but actually some other juicy bits and pieces as well, because the year of 2023 for me, I don't know about you guys, but it felt like the first full year where things were starting to get back on track after the COVID era, after the COVIDity of it all. Now Miss COVID is still running around causing mayhem and destruction, to be sure, but it did feel like for the first time in a while the world had started to kind of run again as it did pre-pandemic. There are definitely some casualties, okay, and some side effects from the pandemic that the industry is discovering still, but I don't know, I felt like 2023 was a time when things were starting to chug along once again. But funnily enough, I found myself wanting to do a little bit more than just sit in a dark room surrounded by strangers watching a massive screen in front of me. I did do that, to be clear. I did do that plenty of times in 2023. In fact, I went to the cinema more than 30 times, okay, last year. And not only that, but I actually went to the most different cinemas than I ever have before. We're talking about 10 plus different cinemas in London. So I was really out here sitting in dark rooms all across the city watching these films. But that kind of speaks to my point, which is in 2023 I really wanted to, you know, go out more, touch grass, like just do a little bit more. And so I had the chance to actually have some really fun experiences, and we are going to be delving into some of those experiences in today's ranking as well. Don't worry, they are all related-ish to entertainment. I'm not talking about my trips to the Transport Museum, although I do that often. I love the London Transport Museum. Okay, but I'm not going to be tackling those. All of the extras that we're going to be including in my ranking are entertainment related. And finally, as my final little point before we dive into this list, I have to let you guys know up front that I messed up. I messed up. My Libra ways got the better of me, and once again, this is not a top 10. This isn't even a top 15. We have like almost 30 things on this list. We have almost 30 films, TV shows, and other things on this list. But don't worry, I'm not going to be diving into each and every one of them in depth. I'm going to be sprinkling in my commentary throughout, but I'll be focusing on the projects and things, I can't wait to tell you, the things that I haven't really talked about on my channel before, because I've actually done a pretty good job of reviewing things, okay, throughout the year, you know, despite some of the health things that have come up throughout the year as well. So you guys can always check out the full reviews to hear more of my thoughts on the projects that appear swiftly in this video. So yeah, that's it for disclaimers. It's time to get into the tried and true tradition on the Jeans Movie Chats channel, and that is the best of 2023. Yeah, so now that you've seen a couple of my favorites from 2023, let's dive into number 26, where we have Culprits. Culprits is a recent British series that I actually checked out on Disney Plus / Star, but I think is released as a Hulu series in the US. And this show stars Nathan Stewart Jarrett, who may or may not be making an appearance more than once on this list. But this series centers on this group of criminals who undergo this huge heist where over £30 million are at stake. And fast forward to when they've managed to somehow successfully pull it off, they are living their own individual lives with whole new identities, starting afresh using that money. But it turns out that recently someone has been hunting them down and killing them one by one, and they need to figure out who it is, who's going to be next, and what can be done about it. So that's the kind of premise of the series, and it has a really brilliant cast, including as well Gemma Arterton. We have Kirby here as well, like just a really great cast overall. And I binge watched this during the holiday period, and I had a grand old time. I'm not sure if it's recency bias that's kind of bringing this series to this list in particular, but I did really enjoy the show. I feel like the mystery was built up brilliantly. I will say I was slightly disappointed by the ending because the reveal wasn't as bombastic as I wanted it to be, but the journey was so satisfying and I really came to care about the characters. I was really invested in their stories and wanting them to succeed, and also all of the twists and turns kept me on my feet the whole time, that I feel like the journey was worthwhile even if the destination wasn't as perfect, pitch perfect as I wanted it to be. So if you guys are looking for a really engaging mini series that has some really cool, compelling characters, it has a lot of heart, but it also, more importantly, has a lot of action, okay? It has a veil of mystery that surrounds it, and each episode reveals a little bit more of what really went down in this massive heist. And on top of that, you have Gemma Arterton just pulling off every single shade of lipstick every single shade of lipstick with her dark hair and pale skin, looking flawless, okay? So if that sounds fun to you, then definitely give Culprits a try. So next up at number 23, we have a film that I have actually already reviewed on my channel. It has its own video and everything, so I'm already breaking my own rule, okay? But hear me out. It cannot be overstated. It cannot be overstated how underrated Gran Turismo is. I'm so sorry. This film was the biggest surprise of 2023 by far because the expectations were so low. This is the newest edition of Sony's PlayStation Cinematic Universe, which of course started with 2005's Uncharted, or at least it feels like it came out in 2005. But yeah, Uncharted was like fine. It was pretty blah. It was pretty meh. Like it was a mid film that did way better than it deserved to. And then you have the second edition, the second entry into the cinematic universe, and we were all kind of like, yeah, whatever, Sony. Like, okay, Gran Turismo, a racing movie about a video game. But then lo and behold, this film ended up being so much better than it had any right to be. Neil Blomkamp did what needed to be done, okay? Believe me when I tell you, if you haven't seen this film is the incredible story of this Gran Turismo gamer who used to play the game, you know, in his bedroom, but then he went on to become a race car driver through this program, this scheme to promote Nissan, and it was just supposed to be like a marketing ploy, but it ended up changing the trajectory of his life. And this is is based off of a true story, loosely apparently. But listen, I don't care about the historical accuracy of this situation. This isn't Napoleon, okay? What I care about is the fact that this is a true story of a guy who used to play video games in his bedroom, and then his life was changed and he started to actually drive race cars. Like, that part is true, in which case that's the most compelling part of the story, so I'm more than happy with that. Now, when it comes to the racing sequences, this film exceeded my expectations. I saw this in cinemas and it made for one of the best theatre going experiences of 2023, hands down. The racing sequences were so well choreographed and so well actualized. It left you gripping your seat, okay? It left me on the tips of my toes. I was invested the entire time. And the budget for this film wasn't particularly high, but this is a perfect example of a filmmaker taking a relatively small budget and just putting all of it on the big screen, making it such a thrilling theatre going experience from start to finish. But even when they were off the track, this film did a really great job of maintaining the stakes involved, showing just how dangerous it was for these amateurs, you know, like these gamers who are used to sitting in the comfort of their rooms or in arcades, to make that transition to being actual race car drivers on an actual racetrack. That's oh my god. On an actual racetrack, that's what it's called, Jean. Anywho, but yes, the stakes were high from the very jump, as was brilliantly communicated by David Harbour's character, as well as Orlando Bloom's character, who was the marketing genius behind this entire scheme. But then you have the main character at the center of the story, Yan, who is portrayed brilliantly by Archie Madekwe, who also made an appearance in another 2023 film, Saltburn. But here he was at center stage and he absolutely knocked it out of the park. He milked every single second of screen time that he had in this film, and he made such a huge impact as this character. And if more people had seen the film, like I told you to, if more people had seen the film, then more people would be talking about his performance here rather than in Saltburn. Spoiler alert for this video, but Saltburn will not be making an appearance in this list. So I had the time of my life watching this film in cinemas, and like I said, it was the biggest shock of 2023, so much so that the original cut, yes, I'm giving you an inside look into behind the curtain of the Genie Awards. The original cut of the Genie Awards for 2023 had one extra category, and that was most underrated film or television series, which is a category that appeared in 2022 as well, but I cut it because the video was too long. But anywho, just to let you guys know here, the winner of that category, and mind you, it was amongst some really tough competition because 2023 was full of underrated projects, but the winner of this category was in fact Gran Turismo. So I guess I could hand it its Genie Award now, in effect. But yeah, I really love this film, and that's why it's featured here today. Okay, so next up at number 21, we have Hijack. And listen, guys, listen, okay, Hijack is a limited series, I think, although you could get a season 2 out of this. Listen, Apple TV Plus, work with me here. But it is a series from Apple TV Plus that stars Idris Elba, who also produced the show. And it is centered on Idris Elba's character, Sam Nelson, who is this mysterious negotiator who's traveling from Dubai to London, and he wants to make his way home to his like ex-wife. Like, he's trying to figure things out with her, okay? He's trying to make things work, and so he's communicating with her whilst he's getting on that plane, and he's like, okay, when I get home, I'm gonna try and, I don't know, beg for forgiveness. I don't know what his plan was, okay? But his plans are thwarted. His plans are thwarted when the plane that he hops on ends up being hijacked, okay, by terrorists. And so here you have the premise of the series that unpacks the events, the mystery surrounding this hijacking. There are times where we are on the plane dealing with the hijacking itself, with all of the terrified passengers, some of whom are given their own little mini stories, so that we can get to know them and empathize with the characters even more. But then there are these twists and turns. If you've seen the show, you know, there are these twists and turns with some of these passengers where you're like, oh, where you're like, you don't know who to trust. You don't know who's involved, who's not involved. There are people who show many different faces on that plane. But then we also deal with the consequences of what's going on the ground, you know, in London, where, you know, the government is involved, these police officers are involved, and Sam's wife, who happens to be, you know, hanging out with a police officer, she's also involved. So we're following these different storylines, whilst at the same time trying to figure out, you know, what this hijacking is about, what is going on. And the hijackers' plans are so convoluted. Like, each and every episode more is revealed and you're like, why would they do this? Oh, it's because, oh my goodness. And you start to understand the bigger plan at play. Now, does this plan always make sense? No. Like, as someone who's watched the whole show, I'm like, okay, that was cool, but that made no sense. And there were lots of things that could have gone wrong. But listen. There are some series and films where, like, if I'm not having a good time, I will start to think about the plot holes and start to think about how this doesn't make sense and that doesn't line up. And that just speaks to the cinema sinsification of media these days. But there are other series where if I'm having the time of my life, I will set aside those concerns. And it's not just me like turning off my brain, but it's me choosing to focus on the positives because they are so riveting and so exciting and engaging that I don't want to be, you know, preoccupied with some of the nitpicking and the plot holes that I could get into if I really wanted to. I didn't want to, because I had the time of my life watching Hijack. It was an excellent binge. And on top of this really exciting melodramatic storyline, you had brilliant performances by the entire cast, but of course in particular by Idris Elba, who's just like, this character again has so many different layers to him. There are times when you feel like you can't trust him. There are times when you're thinking, what's your plan here, sir? Like, because he's supposed to be this mysterious negotiator. We don't even know what he really does for a living, what he was doing in Dubai, but he seems to be the perfect person to tackle this kind of crazy, tense situation. And that proves to be the case most of the time, but there are things that go wrong and you're always left guessing when it comes to this series. And so again, I think this is yet another case of, even though the ending may not have been perfect, I actually think the ending was better than Culprits. Like, I think the ending measured up much better. It's just the little plot holes that you could get into if you wanted to. I didn't, but still, the journey was immaculate. The journey, even if the destination wasn't pitch perfect, the journey was just the ride of my life. Next up, at number 16, we have a super underrated film once again. This time around, this is an Amazon Prime release that was directed by Maggie Betts, who did a phenomenal job, by the way. And it is called The Burial. The Burial stars Jamie Foxx, who portrays Willie Gary, who was a real attorney in America that specialized initially in kind of personal injury cases. So he was seen as like a, was it like a van chaser? or something. But essentially, he would deal with personal injury cases, especially in the Black community, as a Black attorney himself. And he had a stellar track record for over a decade. He had never lost a case. But then here comes Tommy Lee Jones's Jerry O'Keefe, who approaches him to assist him with a contract law matter, because he has been conned out of his business. Essentially, he wanted to sell parts of his business to recuperate some funds because he was in some financial debts, but unfortunately the millionaire who wanted to buy parts of his business kind of slowed down the process, putting Jerry in even more financial troubles, intentionally so, knowing that he wasn't going to buy the business at the price that they agreed upon. So he wanted Jerry to just continue slumping down in those financial troubles until he became desperate, and the millionaire managed to steal his business through daylight robbery, like for just a much lower cost. And so Jerry managed to figure this out, and he wanted to instill the help of an attorney. And his other assistant lawyer that was working with him, called Hal Dawkins, who is brilliantly portrayed by Mamoudou Athie, he suggested Willie Gary, because it was a Black majority community that the proceedings were taking part in, and they knew that the jury would most likely have a lot of Black people in it. So they wanted to play to that and get a Black attorney. And what better attorney than this guy who has a stellar track record? Now, this is a courtroom drama. We saw quite a few of those in 2023 of varying degrees of success. Okay, but in the case of The Burial, it's so brilliant because it manages to balance, the courtroom drama aspect, but also some comedic aspects. Like, it's a really great comedy as well, but then it kind of stops being a comedy and just leans back into drama as the stakes of this case really start to settle. We start to understand both the characters of Jerry O'Keefe, but also especially Willie Gary a lot more. We dive into his past, his family, and also just the experiences of many Black people in America of that time, because this case was set in the 90s. So it's a really great, brilliant retelling of true events. This case was real, as are these people, and it manages to balance, again, comedy. This film is actually hilarious. It's actually hilarious, but as I said, you also have the drama aspect where we're diving into the Black experience in America through Willie Gary's eyes and the experiences of his family members, but also we dive into Jerry O'Keefe's character and how he is this relatively small town guy who has these funeral businesses, these funeral parlors, but he's being taken advantage of by this big millionaire guy who wants to leech off of these businesses, and it speaks to what is happening to a lot of people in the world in a time when mergers and acquisitions are happening tenfold per second. These businesses are getting bigger and bigger and bigger and driving out the little guy, essentially, and it's becoming so hard to even imagine how you can bridge the gap between poverty and the ultra rich, and so it's kind of like a story about the threats towards the American dream that people, even white middle class people, are facing in the US as well. So yeah, all very compelling stuff that is driven by, like I said, great directing, great writing, also exceptional performances. I mentioned in my Golden Globes video that I thought Jamie Foxx was wholly deserving of a nomination for best performance in a comedy. I guess it would be a comedy, because he was brilliant as Willie Gary, who has this like larger than life personality. He flexes a lot. He has his own private jet. Like, he was a very successful attorney, but he took on this case, which was a massive risk. It was outside of his comfort zone. Like I said, this is contract law, and he dealt with personal injury claims mostly, but he wanted to take a chance on it because he saw that this represented the death of the American dream and whatnot, and it ended up being very successful. It ended up being a landmark case in this field, and the fact that it was driven home by a Black attorney is history making. Okay, so next up at number 14, this is where the shenanigans start. This is where the shenanigans start to happen because we have Phantom of the Opera, the theatrical experience, the theatrical extravaganza. Guys, okay, as a Londoner, okay, I live in London. Many of you will know that London is like a theatre going centre. It's a hub, right? It's like the home of theatre. Even before there was a Broadway, there was the West End. But despite the fact that I only live about half an hour away from the West End, I never really grew up going to theatre productions because they're so freaking expensive. I think amongst us working class folks, okay, theatre is seen as something that is very like middle class, upper middle class, because theatre tickets are super pricey. So like when you can't afford to pay £200 for a theatre ticket for one production, okay, instead you just go to the cinema and you pay £6.99 to see an Avengers film. Like that's basically what you can do, because theatre experiences are really, really pricey, especially if you want to get good seats. But as a working woman, I'm not talking about YouTube money because that's non-existent, okay, but as a working woman who is thankfully just starting to move away from the poverty of my early 20s, I did decide to invest in a couple of theatre going production experiences, because like I said, I wanted to go outside and I wanted to touch some grass. So instead of sitting in a dark room surrounded by strangers looking at a massive screen, I decided to sit in a dark room surrounded by strangers looking like other strangers performing live. And the first production that I went to in December still was Phantom of the Opera. And guys, I have wanted to see Phantom of the Opera for the longest time, okay? I had a hierarchy. Like the first thing that I wanted to see in theaters was The Lion King. That was my top priority, and I did actually go see The Lion King in 2022. So if I had included theater productions, I would have covered it in the year before's video. The Lion King, incredible. The Lion King in the West End, amazing, okay? But then a few years before then, I went to see Wicked because it was cheaper than The Lion King at the time. So I was like, fine, I'll go see Wicked. That was like, okay. Like, to me, that was like, fine. Phantom of the Opera, first of all, they have the chandelier thing, which is so impressive in person. I had no idea like what was going to happen with the chandelier. I didn't really have much of a clue about the storyline in general, despite the fact that I had watched a Lindsay Ellis video essay a few years ago discussing the Phantom of the Opera, but I didn't really remember what the actual plot of the story was. I just enjoyed her videos. But yeah, when I was actually sitting there and then they started gathering up the chandelier and then it climbs up and it goes to the top of the actual theatre, it was all so impressive, and that's what I really enjoyed about this show overall. It had such great pyrotechnics, special effects. It had a huge sense of like spectacle, and that's what I want when I'm going to the theatre. I'm not the kind of person, at least right now, to be going to see plays in the theatre, because why am I gonna here we go, like, now you got me started. Why am I gonna go pay £300 to go see someone talking, mumbling okay, mumbling quietly in a distant stage far away from my eyesight? Mind you, I have terrible eyesight, I wear glasses, okay? So someone who's just mumbling to themselves, talking to someone else, doing a couple of monologues and then going home. Why am I going to pay £300 for that? Why am I going to pay £300 for a production that consists of like paper mache walls, okay, with a window, trying to set the scene, but the rest of the room is black and I'm in the fourth wall, I guess, and like I'm not able to fully immerse myself because I'm used to watching films where there's an invisible fourth wall? Why am I going to downgrade to a play? I don't care about the drama. I don't care about the story. I don't care about any of that, okay? I want spectacle. If I'm going to pay that amount of money to see one production one time, I want it to be the most bombastic production I've ever seen. And that's exactly what Phantom of the Opera gave me, okay? It was a spectacle to behold. And clearly I'm not the only one who's in this camp, because there's a reason why this production has been so successful. Andrew Lloyd Webber must be balling. Like he is so wealthy off of this production alone. But there's a reason why it's been going on for like over 30 years, because it really is a show that you can get excited about. Every single second of the show, I was gonna say film, every single second of the show just takes your breath away. You're sitting there captivated, and you're shocked and surprised by all of the, again, special effects, the different talents showcased here. You have different types of dance here. You even have some ballet sprinkled in, more on ballet later, okay? Singing, you have characters singing opera, other types of singing. Listen, okay. The Phantom of the Opera has a little bit of everything, and it just made it one of the most memorable experiences of the entire year. Now, the only reason why this production is relatively low on my list, especially considering all of the praises that I've sung for it, is because of the plot. Listen. I'm still a critical thinker. Despite the fact that I was blown away by the spectacle, by the show itself, the music. Oh my god, the soundtrack is banging. But I don't have to tell you that. Please. 30 years, they know what they're doing. But despite all of that good stuff, I can't get behind the plot. This Phantom is such a... I was gonna say some words, but like, let me just keep it PG. This Phantom is so annoying. Like, what's his problem? Every single time he said Christine, like he exclaims Christine, I just wanted to get up and punch him in the face, like both sides. I wanted to punch him both sides of his face. This idiot who has claimed this woman that he doesn't know, okay, that he has no right to claim to begin with. Why are you possessing this woman? Leave her alone. The entire time I just kept sitting there thinking, you need to leave Christine alone. She's just a singer performing in a show. Like, it's not really that deep. Also, isn't he dead? Isn't, like, he's a ghost, he's a phantom. So like, what's the plan, sir? He wants to make her a corpse bride. He wants to make her a corpse bride, okay, so that he can love her for his eternal afterlife or whatever. I don't know what his plan is, okay, but this guy was just doing way too much, and people got hanged, people died, people lost their voices, their incredible, amazing operatic voices. Voices were lost. Like, this is Little Mermaid. Word to Little Mermaid, word to Ursula, actually. But he's worse than Ursula, because his obsession with Christine was just out of bounds. What are you doing? It was so pathetic. That's what I kept thinking when I was watching this. I was like, oh my god, this Phantom, he's not even cool, he's just pathetic. He's a loser. So, speaking of Ursula, speaking of the Little Mermaid, that's who is next at number 12 on my list. Now, I do already have a full review of the live action remake of the Little Mermaid that came out last year, so you can definitely check that out if you haven't already. But guys, like, I love this film. Sorry, like, I love this film. I've talked about it ad nauseum, so I'm going to keep this short. But I think, first of all, Halle Bailey knocked it out of the freaking park. She did everything and more when it came to the role. She was absolutely perfect as the latest live action Disney princess. She exuded that Disney princessism that made her so lovable as a character. She had that purity to her, that grace, that poise as a Disney princess, but also she, you know, really had that desperation to explore the real world, and that's something that is really hammered home in this live action remake, because they're trying to course correct from the years and years of criticism surrounding the Little Mermaid's, you know, motives to go into the real world. Like, is she doing all of this just for a boy, blah blah blah. Even in the original film, it's made clear that she wants to go into the real world. The love story just so happens to take place, you know, as a little side quest, a side hustle, if you will. But she's always felt, you know, out of place in the sea, and so that has always been her dream, regardless of Eric's involvement. But the live action film really hammers that home even more, and Halle Bailey's, you know, wish, her desire to get out there and explore because she feels so imprisoned by the ocean, especially under Triton's watchful eye. It's just really beautifully conveyed through her performance and of course through her incredible rendition of Part of Your World, which I actually prefer to the original. Do you know how good you have to be for me to be like, you know what, Jodie Benson, you did that, but Halle may have talked to you. Like, Halle may have, she did her own thing as well, because her version of Part of Your World is astonishing. It's the stuff of dreams. And even beside Halle's amazing performance, I think this film was a triumph. I went to see it in the BFI IMAX, so I had a face full of sea creatures. Okay, CGI ocean just surrounded me, and I had a hell of a time, you know. And again, it was in IMAX, so there is that bias, although I also saw Oppenheimer in IMAX, and like, I didn't feel like I needed to. I feel like Oppenheimer could have been in like a nice big cinema screen, but not necessarily IMAX. This is an unpopular opinion, but whatever, we move. We're not talking about Oppenheimer today. But in the case of The Little Mermaid, if you saw it in IMAX, you were living. You were actually living, because it felt like you were under the oceans, in the depths of the oceans. I will say it wasn't quite up to par with like Avatar, because James Cameron is a freak. Like, James Cameron's on a whole different league, so we're not talking Avatar levels of immersion, underwater immersion here. And I did also see Avatar 2 in IMAX. It was actually the first IMAX film that I saw the year before. I keep forgetting. So yeah, that was the film that kind of started me on this IMAX trip, and I wouldn't say that Little Mermaid was quite on that level, but it definitely surpassed, like, you know, Black Panther 2 and Aquaman, I would say. And so it was just a really brilliant underwater adventure. But even when they were on land, there was plenty of adventure to be had there, as well as an amazing love story. Story between Ariel and Prince Eric, who he was definitely an improvement from the animated version. They vastly improved Prince Eric. They gave him far more personality and charisma, and the two had such electrifying chemistry together. And it pisses me off because, you know, Hollywood, because of obvious reasons, Hollywood will see two pretty white people, like say the cast of Anyone But You, and they'll smush them together and put them in endless rom-coms and films together, even though they don't actually have any chemistry. Even though that there's no romantic chemistry, there's no vibe, there's no electricity, it's just dead. Meanwhile, you have Halle Bailey and Jonah Hauer-King, who have electrifying chemistry together on screen, and yet I haven't heard news of them being cast in an upcoming rom-com anywhere. Why is that? Why is that? Because to me, that's just common sense. Like, why are we not casting them in more things together? Because they're amazing together on screen. And it's the same thing with India and Corey from Queen Charlotte, the Bridgerton story. Like, those two should have been cast in every single rom-com for the next 10 years. Because did you see the chemistry? Did you see the material? But no, Hollywood instead will continue to cast the same old blondes in the same old films. Look what happened with Reese Witherspoon and Ashton Kutcher. Listen, okay, listen. So next up at number 11, yes, I'm already back again, but we have a very special entry with the Nutcracker Ballet. Now, this is yet another production that I have always wanted to see. I grew up wanting to watch the Nutcracker so much, and it's mostly because of the animated Barbie film. Yeah, it's because of the animated Barbie film, you know, Barbie and the Nutcracker or something, that I used to have a cassette of, and I used to watch it all the time, okay? That film, listen, I haven't watched it in decades, so like, I don't know if it holds up. It probably doesn't. But all I know is that that film instilled in me a huge love and appreciation for Tchaikovsky's score for the Nutcracker. Tchaikovsky, the score, the music, the soundtrack, what do you even call it? Listen, the music of the Nutcracker is the stuff of dreams. There are so many iconic famous classical pieces in the Nutcracker Suite. That's what it's called, a suite. The Nutcracker Suite. I'm still learning, okay? There are so many famous pieces from Tchaikovsky that are within the Nutcracker Suite. And every single time I listen to it, and I listen to it very often. I listen to it when I'm working, when I'm in the shower. I'm always listening to the Nutcracker Suite, okay? But I'm still constantly surprised by how many famous songs are sprinkled in there. And the fact that the ballet wasn't even successful during Tchaikovsky's lifetime is heartbreaking. But hopefully, you know, he's looking on now and he's seeing how amazing and truly successful it has been for the last century or so, because it's one of the most popular ballets in the entire world. And with good reason, because whilst I was familiar with the Nutcracker Suite, the music itself, I had never actually seen the ballet until last year now, until literally a week ago, where I finally got a chance to see it, and I was just blown away. I love the Nutcracker. I love the Nutcracker, okay? There are just some really talented people in this world, and it's actually kind of insane. It's actually kind of crazy that, like, ballet dancers are what? Like, the ballerina. I mean, what can I even say as I'm sitting here all clumsily, and what can I even say about a ballet performance? Like, it's just incredible. It's a triumph. It's a feast for the eyes. Like, I'm just in shock. This is me discovering ballet. I'm just in shock that people are so talented. And also, another thing that has always held me back about seeing live productions, other than the fact that they're stupid expensive, okay, is also this like little niggling fear that I've always had, where like, what if something goes wrong? Like, I would die of cringe if like something went wrong, if people stumbled or like, you know, messed up their lines. I mean, no one speaks in the ballet, but that's kind of been my general kind of fear of like, what if there's a mistake or something goes wrong or someone forgets their part? But no, after being in full ballet corps mode for this last week, just watching the rehearsals, behind the scenes footage on YouTube, like, there's no way that you can forget anything because you've rehearsed the hell out of the production. Things can still go wrong, but thankfully nothing did in the 2 shows that I went to. But it is just incredible. It is just absolutely amazing to see how skilled these people are, because not only do you have to exert your body in these craziest of ways, but they also have to convey all of the emotions and personality traits and arcs that their characters are going through their body and through their faces. Like, they have to do all of that face acting to make up for the lack of vocal performance, and so it's just like mind blowing. So the ballet dancers that I saw on my show were so incredibly talented, both, you know, the young kids who were up and coming, but also the very experienced adults. It's just a sight to behold. And also, again, another benefit of seeing these productions in 2023 is that we even had some ballet dancers of color. Like, oh, look how far we've come. Look how far we've come. And I don't even follow the theatre space, but there is a massive difference, I already know, okay, from, you know, theatre productions, especially in the UK, from decades ago versus now. The only thing I will say when it comes to the Nutcracker is the story is a bit the story is a bit like, why am I watching Dancing Rats? Like, what's going on? That's the only thing that's not bringing this a bit higher. In both cases, with the Phantom and the Nutcracker, the stories are just like, maybe I'm not used to it because I'm not a theatre girly, but the stories are just like weird and like, like bizarre. But you get the gist of it, you know, with the Rat King. The Rat King was great. He was having the time of his life. He was a great performer. And so, yeah, there is a story under there, I'm sure. And I know it's based off of a Russian book, so like, I'm sure there was more to it, but I think they just kind of stripped it down for the production. And I think it works. Listen, the story is just a vessel for the dancing and the music. Like, that's what really matters, okay? And so in that front, I really did enjoy it. Okay guys, so next up on my list at number 9, we're really comparing apples to oranges to strawberries to bananas to carrots. Okay, but I had to include this here because this year's roundup would not be complete without it, and that was the Disney 100 exhibition. Yes, as I kept saying, in 2023 Disney celebrated its 100-year anniversary, and the company itself was having an awful, terrible time. Literally one of the worst years in Disney's modern history, unfortunately for them. But hopefully they'll figure things out. In the meantime, though, I had the opportunity to head on over to the Excel Centre in East London, not once, but twice, to go to the Disney 100 exhibition, where they had a ton of stuff, a ton of historical artifacts from Walt's life, as well as a lot of, set pieces and drawings, illustrations, props, models, a whole bunch of stuff, costumes as well, from various Disney projects over the decades. It really was a grand celebration of, Disney's legacy over the last 100 years. And as someone who has grown up, who has been raised by Disney animated classics and continues to love a lot of, Disney adjacent franchises like the MCU, this was just an absolute delight. I had the time of my life checking out these props, learning about the history of the company, and just being surrounded by Disney propaganda. Disney propaganda for a good 2 to 3 hours. Like, I was living, okay? Okay, so next up, we are officially in the top 5, and at number 4, we have Lupin Part 3. Guys, if you know anything about me, if you know anything about me, you know one of my favorite things that Netflix has ever produced is the Lupin series. I love the Lupin series so much. I think this is one of the, like I said, one of the best things that Netflix has ever produced. And 2023 gave us a 3rd season of Lupin. I didn't even know it was coming. I remember the day when I sat down and was just browsing through Netflix and saw a new season of Lupin, and no one told me. Like, I was furious, and I was even more furious because it came out when I was still in my health adventure, so I couldn't even do a review. Oh, I was gutted. But let me tell you guys now that Lupin still has my whole heart. This is one of the best shows out there today. It is a French language show, and I do speak and understand French, so I was watching it in the original language. Not to toot my own horn or anything. And I should watch more French shows because my French has gotten really rusty, dusty, musty. So in order to get more practice, like, I should really just watch more French shows, because it really helped me out when I was binge watching the series. I was like, oh, I remember this language now. Anyways, but aside from the French lessons that I got from the show, one of the best things about it is the central character himself, Lupin, who is incredibly portrayed by Omar Sy. Omar Sy has achieved what is relatively rare, which is, portraying a character that just become so iconic and so inextricably linked with him. He has made this character so iconic, so lovable, and his charisma and likability has propelled this series to become one of the most successful French shows of all time. But aside from Omar Sy's charisma, uniqueness, nerve, and talent, you also have this really engaging and exciting storyline. And where we left off in season 2 is that he was on the run after one of his grand plans. Okay, he is on the run. People know who he is now, and so he is the most wanted man in France. And he is struggling with this, especially because he does have a family. He has Claire and their son, but he's trying to have it both ways still, you know, being on the run, but also trying to find a way where he can, you know, be with his son and his family somehow. But it becomes clear over time that that may not be possible. And so in order to try and have his cake and eat it too, he comes up with this grand plan to fake his own death. To fake his own death. But this season gave us yet another season of Hassan's genius planning, okay, genius use of technology and bits and pieces. And of course, speaking of pieces, hair pieces, of course, we need to dive into the costumes. We need to dive into the disguises. Like, I just love everything about this character. I don't know if Netflix has formally renewed the show for a season 4, but I'm assuming they have. And if I hear otherwise, I cannot be held responsible for my actions if Netflix commits a mortal sin and cancels this show, especially before season 4, where I get the answer to all the questions that I have after that cliffhanger for season 3. Listen. Okay, I'm not even going to speak that disastrous outcome into existence because I know there will be a season 4. Like I said, this is the biggest show in all of France. So they best not let this show get cancelled by Netflix. So we have finally reached the end of my best of 2023 video, and at number 1, we don't just have a TV show. We don't just have a movie. No. We have an experience. We have a journey. We have an era. At number 1, we have Beyonce's Renaissance.
Close my eyes and travel through realms of space and time. Reality holds no power or control of my state of mind on my voyage to find a source to charge my inner being. Assembly line frequency as I tap my MPC. Welcome to
I want to take you back to, I think, April of 2023, where Beyonce's Renaissance tour started. Before this, I had not really been paying attention to Beyonce's whereabouts, if I'm being honest. Okay, I have been a Beyonce fan for a long time. I grew up listening to Dangerously in Love on repeat. I know the entire sequence of that album, and I know every single word of every single song on that album because I listened to it non-stop when I was like 5 years old. So please, okay. But I did kind of fall off as a Beyonce fan in the 2010s because I was too busy listening to like alternative music. I was too busy listening to like Imagine Dragons and Linkin Park. So I was like, oh, Beyonce, that's a thing of the past, okay? But then I recently got back in the game with Black is King, where I was like, oh, Beyonce is like diving into African lore. Okay, like I was interested, and I absolutely loved the featured song that she had for King Richard, Be Alive, which she performed at the Oscars in Compton. I thought that was such an amazing performance, and I really, really love that song. It's literally my Spotify Wrapped, like even of 2023, so please, okay? So yeah, I got back on the Beyonce train, right? But as of the end of 2022, I hadn't actually listened to the Renaissance album, but then the tour started. And then as I was unfortunately addicted, unfortunately chained to that Bluebird app, okay, I started seeing clips of Beyonce on stage performing, and these songs just kind of started resonating with me, and I was like, maybe I need to check out this album after all, because something is happening in my brain and I kind of love it. And I started listening to the album, and the rest is history, quite frankly. The rest is history. The Renaissance album consumed my entire life in 2023. There was nothing else. There was no other music. There was nothing else to explore. There was nothing else to be done. Why would I be doing anything but listening to the Renaissance album? Like, what else would I be getting up to? Don't be ridiculous. So I was having the time of my life listening to this album on repeat and watching clips that people filmed of Beyonce in this world tour. But then I kept watching these clips, and I went from being intrigued to invested to mournful because I didn't have tickets to this concert. And she had 5 dates in London and like 1 million dates in the UK, but 5 dates in London. And then I looked it up and I was like, she's performing in Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And without revealing my location too closely, that is like ridiculously close to me. I knew that there would be people coming from America to see Beyonce, and she was literally just like half an hour away from me. There was no excuse. There was no excuse for me not to go. But the tickets have been on sale since February. There was no way I was gonna get tickets, right? Well, look who got tickets. Look who got tickets to see Beyonce. You want to talk about a financial investment? Listen, it was actually like not that expensive. It was pricier than my theatre tickets. I think it was like about £180, which is relatively cheap in comparison to America, apparently, where it's like thousands. I'm so sorry for you guys. Okay, but I paid about £180 and I got decent seats. And on the 1st or 2nd of June 2023, I got to see Beyonce in concert for the very first time.
It's a reminder. What's up, hot? You doing that? Come build this. We never quit. No stress, regret, Renaissance, yes. Come to the feminine one. Oh! Come on now. Come to the feminine one. Oh! Now. Come to the feminine. It's a reminder. Come to the feminine one. Yes, now. Come to the feminine. Yes, now.
Damn, I love the burning of the dagger from the west that you say. Yeah. Dancing in the mirror, kiss my skies because I love what they made. Oh yeah. She's a god. This my skin though. This that war. That's my bloodline. On the front line, ready for war. Come on, bro. Gotta protect my grace, keep it locked in my safe. Come and get you back to my ways. My power they'll never take.
And my life hasn't been the same since. It's honestly really true what they say. Like, when you have seen the best in concert, you kind of wonder, like, what direction is there to go from here? Because I've seen Beyonce in concert and it was incredible. It was amazing. It was phenomenal. So, like, who else am I gonna see? Like, who else is gonna fill that gaping hole inside of me? And I continued my Renaissance journey a few days afterwards because they even had a little exhibition in London. London actually got quite a bit. London actually got quite a lot this year, okay? But they had the exhibition in Oxford Circus in a place called Flannels, where they displayed Beyonce's limited edition couture line with Belmar. So I managed to see in person each of the pieces that she designed to go with each of the songs from the Renaissance album. Most of the pieces were there, a few were missing, but I'll insert some footage here hopefully for you guys to see. They were absolutely beautiful, exquisite couture pieces, some of which she's already worn for the photography for each of the singles, but yeah, absolutely amazing stuff. So yeah, not only did I get a chance to listen to the music, enjoy the performance and the show itself, but then I got to dive into the Renaissance fashion, which leads me to the end of the year where my Renaissance journey was complete for now. Apparently we're waiting on part 2 any day now. The end of my Renaissance journey, for part 1 at least, came with the release of the Renaissance film, which was absolutely brilliant. Not only did I get to see yet again the amazing performances from the Renaissance show, this time around from, you know, different destinations and different dates that she had on the world tour, with incredible outfits throughout. Oh my, the fashions of the Renaissance tour were out of this freaking world, okay? But not only did I get to experience that once again, but we also got some behind the scenes footage and a deep dive into what it took to bring this show to life. And on top of that, the film also covers what the Renaissance era is supposed to mean, it's supposed to embody. It dives into the ode to the LGBTQ community that the album represents, especially with Beyonce's Uncle Johnny, who was such a huge part of her life a few decades ago. He helped create, you know, the costumes and build the image of Beyonce and Destiny's Child in the early parts of their career, and so she commemorates him here and dedicates this album and this whole era of her career to him and to other members of the LGBTQ community throughout the world, whose, you know, music and culture greatly inspired this album and this era. I think the entire journey that I had with the Renaissance throughout 2023 was really captivating, really eye-opening, and a true marker for some of the best experiences that I had in 2023. So that's it from me, guys. Now that I told you guys my highlights, the best films, TV shows and experiences of 2023, it's time for you guys to let me know what you thought of my list and what your highlights for the year were down in the comments below. Please be sure to subscribe to catch new videos coming up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.